morning, fellas, and good morning to our listeners here on the Headset Sports Podcast. I have cycling royalty with me today. This is by far a first for me and a first for us to have two legends in the world of cycling here today. And I'm so lucky to have John and Christian Vande Velde here. And wow. Thank you both for making time to come and talk with me today, especially you guys be on the East Coast. John, good morning. Thank you for being here and talking with me.
Morning, Jason.
Christian, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to chat with me. I have so many questions, and I'm going to try and do my best to keep my ADD focused here. But I have so many things I want to ask you guys about your experiences. Both of you represented the U.S. in multi-Olympics. John, you in Munich in 72. And then John, you have two kids that also represented the country. Like, what a cycling family you created. Oh, my God. So yeah, I'm telling you, wow, what a great wife you have. So Christian, you were in the Olympics in 2000 and 2008. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So like, what happened in 2004? Hello, what happened there? Joking. But
you want me to go on or no?
Yeah, please. Yeah, I'd be curious. I'm giving you a hard time, but please, yeah.
No, I had a really tough spot in the middle of my career. So I came out of the gates really strong as a young rider. Had a lot of great results, good contracts with big teams, and then really just a whole lot of different circumstances. Looking back at it now, a lot of it had to be mental. A lot of it was physical, my back, hips, all these kind of things, all just went kind of spiraling out of control. And I went from, being one of the best and the best team in the world to really just trying to beg for a team. Right in that instance, like 2004, 2005, 2004, especially going onto a Spanish team, and then begging my way off that Spanish team onto a Danish team, just for the minimum salary, and just to keep myself relevant within the sport. So yeah, that was 2004. I was nowhere near being an Olympic team. There's times when you wish you were there because you feel like you should have been there or you're so close. But that time, I remember watching the Olympics in Athens and thinking, I am so glad I'm not there. I would have made a fool out of myself. I was not ready for it physically or mentally. But yeah, those were kind of the years that weren't. And but at the same time, really made me who I am today. And without one or the other, I don't think I'd appreciate what I had later in my career.
So I just have to say to you, it's amazing to hear you speak. And I got to tell you, you're amazing on TV. Like there's some people that I've met in my life that go to school after their pro career is done. Like in hockey, as a hockey guy, there's a program that's run for a lot of guys and ladies when their careers are done, that they kind of learn how to get behind the mic and get behind the camera and do what they do. And some do it well. Some you can see that they have to work at it. You're just so good at it. I just got to tell you, you're just like, it's your second evolution. So I don't know if you feel as comfortable as what I'm saying.
No, hell no, man. I mean, I'm not even close. I mean, especially the first couple of years I was there, I was tripping over myself, and I still have a hard time with it. It's always a struggle because we don't do it year round and year out. I mean, so we really have 1 month a year. So even though this is going to be my 7th year, I guess this will be doing 6 or 7 and whatever, 6 or 7 years. It's really just 1 month, but it's, you have a lot of seat time for 21 days of racing in a row. But the first couple of years, no, it was horrible, man. Every time I got the rock, I was freaking out big time. And it was more that I had so much I wanted to say and so much information that I just couldn't get it all out at one time until I finally started to learn. And Paul Burmeister, who sits with me at the desk, was really integral in that and making sure that just have one great point, one great thing that you want to push forward, and you think that everyone's really going to be interested in hearing about, and then just go from there. And if you have time, then you can quit throwing those other points. Don't try to get 5 or 6 in and half-ass all of them. Try to get that one thing in there, because that's helped a ton. But no, I still suck. I appreciate what you're saying, but I do my best, and I just want to give the people, how much I appreciate the sport, and I want to give them that same feeling at home.
Well, buddy, you know how I take what you say? I refer to that as almost first date syndrome, right? Like she said yes, and you get to the table, and it's like, blah, 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 I gotta tell you about my life and everything in between, right? And when do you stop? So I know what you mean, and I've fallen victim to that millions of times in my life. So I just gotta let you know, from one person with a rock in front of me today, you do a great job doing the amazing
Thanks.
Crescent and camouflaging it. John, I want to get in with you, and you're the architect to this kid, and you also have another amazing one that you created with your daughter, Marissa, who had a really great career as well as a cyclist. I got to ask you, how did you get into cycling? Like, how did this start for you?
Well, my dad and my uncles both raced, and so I just picked it up. I swam for 3 or 4 years, and I got so tired of swimming, and it wasn't exciting anymore. So I went to this bike race, and I just fell in love with it. And I came back from a meeting, and I said I want to race bike with my dad, and my dad said, "Nah, you're going to be on an Olympic team in swimming." And I said, "No, I'm not." And so he was contrary to me at the beginning, but then the family just got way behind it. And excuse me, I started riding at 5 o'clock in the morning with my uncles and my dad, and same course 50 years later, there's like 30 people riding the same course at 5 o'clock in the morning. And it's just, we started this, and that's how it started. And once I got into it, I loved it. I absolutely loved cycling. I had some really bad spills, but I started cycling when I was 14 and made my first Olympic team when I was 19.
Wow. So you've had a chance to compete as a world-class Olympian, and then you got into coaching. And you've been obviously beside Christian and your daughter the whole way through, and I got to ask, what are some of the biggest challenges that you realized, like in your career along the way, and how are those maybe similar or different for athletes in cycling today?
Well, I think the biggest difference is money. I mean, when I was racing, we were amateurs. I mean, we were really and truly amateurs. Adrian Rutledge was the head of the Olympics and the IOC, and he just put his foot down on our necks, and we were totally amateurs, but we were going against pros. We were going against the Russians, the Germans, the Czechs. Excuse me. And one year I trained in Paris for a year, and there was a guy named Daniel Morillon, and he was world champion 5 times and Olympic champion twice, and he trained at this track outside Paris with me every day, and I found out. I was wondering, how do you make a living? And he says, "Oh, I'm a policeman." I never ever saw him in a police uniform. He was always at the track, and he was never in a police uniform. But that was it was so topsy turvy and so one sided, because we could not take a wheel for a president, and these guys they were pros. They were all pros, and that's why it's so good, to see Christian being able to compete with the same guys. I broke down the doors. I broke down the doors, and showed the Europeans that we could race.
Yeah.
And he took it up.
So you definitely were one of the innovators that helped push that through. And I guess, Christian, when you were young, how old were you when you finally got on the bike and said, "I want to do this"? How old were you when you really started?
I was pretty old. I was 15, 16. My dad was always there trying to make me actually pulling me back and really keeping hands on the reins of me getting in a little bit too early, and becoming a very successful junior, but kind of burning out and leaving the bike by the wayside going into college. So he really wanted me to if I was really going to take it seriously, be better later on in life when it mattered, and not be one of the best 15, 16-year-olds. And so he just wanted me to be as balanced as possible. What you see a lot of these recruits looking for in college athletics, can they dunk a basketball even though they're going for the football team kind of thing. And so I played golf, and I wrestled. I did some just normal things, as a high schooler, and didn't take it too seriously. And then 16 years old is when I first started to take it a little bit more serious, and 17, and every year from there it just went incrementally straight up until I graduated high school.
So I'm very lucky to meet you guys, as you know, through a legend in U.S. cycling, with Mr. Danny Van Out, right? Who was the gentleman that started Team Jelly Belly about 20 years ago, and now is captaining, Team Wildlife Generation, and the Beast is the one that's brought me into your world and has taught me so much, and I owe so much to him, because I never would have got a chance to speak with you guys today. But I'm really curious, Christian, when you talk about getting in at 15, I'm so green at your sport. I've only been around it for about 8 to 10 years now, and I'm still learning so much. But when you were growing up, what was cycling like, even as a sport at 15, say 20 some odd years ago?
No, that's a fair question, Jason, because it's not like I'd never seen the sport and I just started like taking it up. And from, you bring Danny Van Hout, that's a great point to bring him up as well. I mean, he was my hero coming, because he would come over for dinner. He would eat us out of house and home. I remember he ate two chickens one time. He'd be just coming in there straight off the plane from the Olympics. So he had all a Huffy and red, white, and blue gear on, immaculate bike. And then during the 80s, dripping in neon. And Danny was like really tan. So like the tan lines, just all these kind of things a 7-year-old's completely in awe of, like, holy crap, here's this superhero walking in my house who's just shredded, muscles coming out, tan. He's got the dog. He lives in California, which was so foreign to a kid from the burbs. Like, this guy's living the dream. I got to do this. So yes, I was exposed to all these kind of things. So I knew more than a 25-year-old professional, just because of the people who were just walking through her house who were just friends of my dad. And just those kind of conversations, it was just not a big deal. So, even my birthday parties, we went to bike races. That's where I wanted to go to. We went to the biggest criteriums downtown, and Danny would be giving us hats, and then he would introduce us to his teammates, and we loved it. I mean, I still have my friends ask me about, remember when we went down to 1986 to so-and-so criterium? It was, meeting Eric Heiden, all these legends at the time. So yeah, to be fair, I was much more into cycling than saying that I started racing when I was 16. Especially from your world in hockey. I mean, there's nobody playing the NHL who started playing hockey in 16 years old. It's you don't have a chance. You already got to be one of the best in the world by that point in time. So with those kind of endurance sports and having how much knowledge of the sport I already did just because I was living in this household, it wasn't that hard of a transition to make in a couple of years.
Buddy, it's amazing what you say. There's an athlete on Danny's team now who talks about a similar upbringing as you, and his father is a world-class downhill ski coach, and he talks about the power and influence of his father, like your dad, John, who brought in these wow people into his life, into their home, because some of these guys were billeting with his family, and being around that atmosphere of athlete, being around that atmosphere of talent and understanding, like what it's like to be that focused, to be that dedicated, committed at a young age. It's got to be a powerful influence on a young athlete.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I think of that often, and it goes both ways. Like Jim Akowitz was my dad's roommate. And which Olympics was that, Dad, that you guys were together?
Munich.
In Munich. And then so he'd be coming to my house, and I would have to sleep on the couch, and he'd jump in my bed, like, I don't know, since I was 3 years old. And just that was just, she just came through the house. And he was, good friends with my grandfather as well. And I love the same thing, bringing my buddies in who I've known since forever, who won the Giro d'Italia, or, whether it's Bobby Julich or George Hincapie, who live downtown, and the kids don't know any better. And I think that's awesome. I don't want them to be looking up to friends. That's just, that's George. He did his Goomba thing the other day, and just that's what I love about it. But it's it really does make a big difference in hindsight. At the time, you don't really realize how big of an influence that is, but later on, you really appreciate it.
I'll share with you guys a little bit about my life in that for a good portion of my life growing up, I'm the product of a single mom with 2 kids. And it wasn't until later in my life that a male role model came in as a step parent, as a stepdad into my life. And it's funny what you talk about, because I refer to that as the community that supports, the community that guides you. And I was lucky because in my upbringing, my mom knew nothing about sports. And I was just so lucky that the environment she put me in to keep me out of trouble, kind of thing, we're surrounded with people who were good people that just wanted to give back and were a little bit more, I'll say, socially in tune and wanting to help. And being around those good people to create someone for me to emulate was a really huge factor for me, because it kept me on the straight and narrow, and it really gave me that mental and emotional focus to stay on the dream that I have and the passions that I have of pursuing sports. So it's amazing what you guys did. And I'm curious, John, growing up and coaching at an elite level, I guess I want to tap into that mental side of sport and maybe talk a little bit about what you went through as a young athlete and then as a coach on the mental side of things. How difficult was it for you when you were starting off and telling people, hey, I want to pursue cycling way back when?
I'll tell you one story that I've always told about how small the sport was when I was riding. And after Mexico City, I was wearing my Olympic blazer to a show, and I was sitting in line waiting for some popcorn or whatever, and somebody said, "Oh, you were in the Olympics?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "What sport?" And he said, "Cycling." He said, "What do you ride? A Suzuki or a Honda?" I said, no, it's a Schwinn, and that's how small this was. It was totally obscure. I mean, absolutely, totally obscure, but, we kept on going and put our head down. And, we had great crowds at every Thursday night at Northbrook and great crowds at every Tuesday night in Kenosha. And we just kept on, we thought it was great. And we didn't know any better. And so with the mental side of it, I didn't have a coach. My uncle was my coach, and he was just a great guy and would just, try to, he was more of a guy that would bring me along and says, "You did a good job today," but he wouldn't say, "Okay, you got to ride 25 miles today. You got to do this, you got to do that." We had no coach. And so when I retired or semi-retired, I was racing against Danny and then with Danny and then I helped Danny. I know that I didn't know the ins and outs of everything. And when Christian came along, I got him on the bike, I got him fitted on the bike and that sort of thing. But then what I did was pass him along to people that I've met through the years. He had a good junior coach. And then I don't know this, but I was the guy who started Motorola for Aquads. Yeah, I got Motorola involved in it. And so because of that, Tom Schuler invited Christian up to a training camp. And Schuler, and he's shy. And Schuler called me up and says, "You got something here. You got to take care of this, and you got to move him up." So I called Danny, who was the coach at the juniors for USA Cycling, and got him into some programs. And then he got him in with Roger Young, who was another coach with USA Cycling. And that's where the ball started, and then later on in his career, actually, as Christian said, it went uphill very, very fast. I called Mark Gorski and I said, "Hey, Mark, I think you should take a look at Christian." And that's how we got him in Postal. So I used my, I wasn't really coaching that deeply. I was really just opening the doors for the kids to go up.
I mean,
I'll take over there, Jason.
please.
I would say yes. He didn't know. I mean, as far as the actual being articulate with what the training was, no, he didn't know shit from shine, all of that. He was just we're very blessed that he was a very strong rider who could kick a lot of ass. mental side, however, which was really bigger than any, I would take any day, you know, in hindsight, very strong. And so, you know, what they didn't have in textbook or good trainers is they had a very strong mental attitude, and that was passed down at an early age, from things like visualization before races, night before things. That was a very early adopter to that, and still uses that to this day. And really just the pep talks and all those kind of things, you know, the cliche things over and over again, you know, like everyone puts their pants on the same way. All those things always came back, you know, and just the small little mantras that you just have through your head when the chips are down and you're a young kid and you're stressed out. Those little things went farther than any kind of training program. And that was already there. The base was there, and the work ethic was there, even though I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and not, you know, who really did. But I had the eye of the tiger every time, just going back to one of the cliches that he'd always say. So those are the kind of things that were fantastic for me and my sister that we had in spades.
Well, it's funny. I wrote that same one down.
Well, it's funny though, but it's also powerful, and I'll tell you, you know, one of the things, Christian, that I saw in doing a little bit of my research on you, is I came across an old YouTube video of you in 2008. And you were in the middle of a race, and everyone was flocking to you with TV cameras and microphones and all this kind of stuff. And I believe, I could be wrong, I believe that you were in the Giro, and you could see in your face this complete innocence, this complete honesty when you were talking about how good it felt to be up in the top and to be competing against the best and to be doing really well. And you had made a comment like, you know, I realized that I can do this. I can do this. Like it's almost like this the clouds parted, and you felt like this innocence to say, you know what, like you said, everyone puts their pants on the same way, and I can do this. And I think that's such a huge thing, because in order to get to that point, I believe you have to have those cement blocks, those pillars underneath that get you to that point where you can.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I had that. And I think we talked about this when we were on the phone. And those are the kind of things that I had a struggle with, you know, and in the doldrums of my career that we talked about earlier in 2004, that's where I was. And to get that confidence back was really hard. And it's honestly, it's something that I struggled with my whole career, though. Not necessarily seeing myself as being one of those guys that I was competing against, or almost emulating the people in the peloton who I was racing against, which, you know, it came down a little bit of my own fear of failure, just being good enough where I was like one of the best domestiques in the world, which was a great living, not really having to really put your neck on the line and put it out there that hey, I want to go get top 5 of the Tour de France, for example, and everyone kind of snicker, and then you fail and you get whatever 25th place, and I remember when he was going to say he was going to get top 5. Those kind of things were really hard for me to do, and that was that first year, and that was the first year also that I told you I started working with a sports psychologist as well, and really just kind of relieving myself from some of those burdens and relieving myself from some of those insecurities that were just hindering me for so many years.
Yeah. You know, John, I got a question for you, and this could be a big one, and I'm going to throw it to you as well, Christian. But what do you notice different about today's cycling athlete, John, compared to back in the day, or maybe when Christian was coming up the ranks? What do you notice about that athlete today that's riding the bike?
Well, I don't know so much about the guys today. I'll just speak about Christian between he and I. And I mean, his mental attitude, you know, compared to mine. I mean, I was a hard trainer. I had nobody to race with. I had nobody to train with. You know, I culted out everything that I did by myself. You know, but Christian, he had the wherewithal to find really good people to talk to and to emulate. And I'll never forget, in '99, after his first Tour de France, we had a place in northern Wisconsin, and we were up there for Christmas vacation. And he went out for a bike ride, and while he was out on a bike ride, it started snowing. and it kept on snowing, and it kept on snowing. 4 inches later, he finally comes in the door. 4 hours, his mother was a basket case. And he says, I'm okay, Mom, don't worry about this. And he goes downstairs and he rides the roller for an hour and a half after he was on the bike. And I said, wow, this is a whole new level that I've never seen from my son. That's when he started to get, he talked to Lance and he talked to George and he talked to people like that. And that's when he became stronger and stronger and harder mentally and physically. And once he did that, just opened the doors, man.
Yeah, I mean, Jason, from like myself to now, it's again, the seas are just keep on opening from every generation. I think it's going faster and faster, especially with technology these days. And everyone from a kid and top of a mountain in Ecuador to Colombia, especially we're seeing a lot of these high altitude guys from South America absolutely destroying the opposition because there's so much more technology where it took, you could start with my dad and not having anyone to really have any kind of guidance, not having anyone to train with, to myself, where we still had a little bit more understanding of the sport. We had a little bit of infrastructure and the vehicle to go over to Europe and race against the best. And so now we're having a Zoom meeting first and foremost. Okay, this is a weird time. I'm in quarantine, but training. I mean, I can see if you stop at your girlfriend's house, how long, what your heart rate was. I mean, there's so much technology that goes passing back and forth that everyone has this at their fingertips right now if they want it. And whether it be a world-class trainer who could see exactly what you're doing without ever having to be in your physical presence at all. And so I think with those kind of things at everyone, and you're seeing talent get younger and younger, where it used to take years in the saddle racing into foreign land until you knew, okay, now I'm in Milan San Remo, okay, now I'm in Italy, this is how things go. And I mean, everything's changed, from team chefs to psychologists to dietitians. There's nothing that isn't looked after, no stone that isn't unturned. So right now, I think it's a really cool time in sport right now for cycling, just because we're seeing the talent become younger. Mm-hmm. They don't have, it's changed. You don't have the guys who've been in the sport as long, they don't have the same name, but I mean, seeing a rider at 22 years old up at the front of the Tour de France and win the Tour de France, it's awesome. So yeah, I'm in awe. I mean, consider it wasn't that long since I left the sport in 2013 to what they're doing now. And, the diet though, and the amount of hours that they have to do. I mean, mine is already stupid. Now it's just it's an equation. Your engine can go this fast. How much can you weigh? And this is that equals how fast you go up a hill. So it's a race to the bottom right now. How much can you train and how light can you be?
Wow. I mean, you dropped so many humongous bombs of information there. And you being around these athletes with your coverage, again, which is fantastic on NBC, and you do a great job with it. I'm curious to get your opinion on the mental and maybe even emotional side of the athletes today that you're seeing and you're in communication with, because one of the things that I always have to remind myself about when we compare athletes from different generations is that we have technology like you're talking about now, right? And like everybody on the planet, I'm sure we're watching on Sunday nights, The Last Dance, Chicago Bulls. John, you're down, right? Chicago. And it dawned on me on Sunday when one of the people making the presentation had said, we need to remember that Michael Jordan's status as an elite of athletes ever was at a time when there was no social media, right? There wasn't people chirping him on Facebook, Instagram, whatever, right? And I wonder, maybe from your perspective, Christian, what is that mental side and emotional side like now that you see for the athletes that you come into contact with? There's got to be a ton more pressure, I would think, because of that stuff.
I agree, and I said the same thing. I mean, would Mike be Mike with Twitter and Instagram right now, or if everyone has a beautiful camera phone with them at all times, you could videotape, hey, you're doing something silly you shouldn't be doing. Somebody just got that on videotape and you're off the races. So no, I think everyone's had that conversation. Would the Brat Pack be the Brat Pack with social media? No way. I mean, there's so many of these kind of instances that you could talk about that. So, but with the riders right now, and having to have that social media presence, having to have that brand and push that forward, for better for worse. Yeah, it's just an added. Sometimes it's amazing. Some things are great. There's no doubt. But the other side, someone's right now, for example, I had a friend who did a little bit too much on social media, got reprimanded pretty bad just because he was cracking a little bit during this quarantine, and that came back and bit him. So yeah, there's a lot of pressure, and I would say that one of the biggest things is that, as far as mental aptitude right now, is that when we went over to Europe, it was pretty much for the duration of the year. I don't think these days with training, and again, like I was mentioning before, with being able to do everything via wire and send in your training files and have these kind of discussions over the phone, there's no reason you can't go back to your home country, and get mentally fit and physically fit and be happy, God forbid, when you got to the race and be ready to go. Whereas a lot of times, if you didn't live in Europe, you're making your own home over there. I don't care if you're from Australia or Ireland or United States, you're trying to make the best work, whether it be in Italy, France, or Spain, usually, for us. And that's where I stayed 10 months a year to 12 months a year, a lot of times year round. And that's a big difference that you see, that, the Belgian or the French rider going home and having coffee with his mom and dad or grandma and grandpa, and going back to their childhood home and having that anchor there that a lot of these expats don't necessarily have. So letting them go back home, rest up mentally before physically, back to Colombia, let's say, and they're eating their home cooked food and they're with mom and dad and they're training like Godzilla, they're coming back and ready to kill people when they come back. Where if you leave them by themselves back in Spain, they're homesick, they're over it, they get depressed. Before you know it, they're already gained 5 pounds because they're eating what they shouldn't be and they're not training. So they're just you got to keep them happy, at the same time. And it's a fine line between how hard you push them. I mean, no one's a robot still. I mean, I don't care how mentally tough you are. There's still a human sense that's somewhere deep down in there.
Christian, you're amazing. I mean, everything that you're sharing today, my God, it's amazing. I guess my questions for you are growing now. You talk about the power and the strength of being able to give that athlete a chance to re-energize, to get back home with the family and kind of get back to their center so that they can, boom, explode outward. Let me ask you this. Do you think that's even more necessary now with all this other social pressure that we have? Or has it always been there and maybe we know more now to do it? Do you know what I mean?
I 100% understand what you're saying. I see that. Yeah, I think there is a good, it could be even more important now than ever to be grounded. But for example, my dad did a really good job of sending my sister and I home we lived together at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs. And there's a lot of kids there, they'd be there for all the holidays, with the jam. There's really nobody left, a skeleton crew. And luckily I got flown home back for Easter and of course Christmas and even Thanksgiving, all those kind of holidays. And I got to go and see all my buddies coming back from college and have a little bit of sense of normalcy, and then come back and not just be completely burned out of staying there and eating the dorm food day in, day out. But with social media, having that grounding and really going back to family, yeah, I do. Maybe they don't realize it right now. Maybe they want to keep up with the Joneses and go into some far off location and go into a nice big vacation with a new girlfriend, whatever they're doing at that time. But I think it does catch up with you, eventually, and you'll see people putting more worth on that, trying to really recharge and going back home.
I think, when you talk about these points, you wonder how many might not be aware of what you're saying and might look at some opportunities like we have now to take their team and maybe engage in overtraining, right? Maybe saying, you know what, everyone's kind of down, everyone's kind of out of it right now. Here's where we need to push harder to maybe get a jump, get an edge, get a lead out on somebody because of this downtime. And I wonder what your opinions are on that. Like, if you think that's what's going on, if you think that's a common mistake, or maybe that's what they should be doing. I don't know.
That's $1 million question. What's it going to be like when people show back up, for racing? There's going to be everywhere from racing to NFL to you just go name the sport. You're going to have guys who come out of this blazing, and you're going to have guys who suck. You know, there's going to be everything in between, you know, whether they're not physically ready or mentally ready. It's going to be very interesting. But if I was a coach, if I was a trainer, would I be putting the hammer down on these guys? I don't know, man. I don't think I would have been, you know, but it was the question was, or the hardest part was that you didn't know when the end was, you know. They kept them moving the goal line the whole time, especially for the Olympians. I mean, you wait 4 years and it's no, sorry, it's not going to be this year. It's going to be the next year. So all that, my heart goes out to them big time. If you're a 4-year sport, you know, like athletics, for example, something like that. So that's got to be really hard. But it's going to be interesting to see the mental side. You know, the guys who needed the time to really push hard, especially like Chris Froome, I think is the best example. He needed this time to come back from his horrific crash last year in June. So he's the one who's really smiling out, you know, ear to ear right now, really putting the hard yards by himself. And no one can train like Chris Froome can when he's by himself like that, or needs to or wants to. You know, he's got 4 championship belts for the Tour de France underneath him already. It's not like he needs another one, but he really wants it bad. So I would say the one person this is favoring right now is that man right there. And so he's looking at his chops at coming back and win number 5.
So you bring up a little segue point here that I think would be interesting to talk about. You know, you talked about injury. You've talked about having a down point in your career when I was pulling your leg there about like 2004. Comparing the gentleman you just brought up in your time when you have those little dips in your career, right? A lot of people don't seem to understand that in performance, you need a dip to soar, right? It's funny when I talk to a lot of coaches and you know, armchair quarterbacks, they think the elite are just constantly at this level, not realizing there has to be a down period to come back up. I guess my question for you is when you had a bit of a dip in your career, what were some of the things that you did to regain that emotional, mental, maybe even physical strength to get yourself back up to elite status? How did you come through that little dip that you had in your career?
I would say every time there was a big dip, whether it be from a crash or sickness or just not being good for a prolonged period of time, there's always that little glimmer that gave you like that sense of that I can do this again, and just giving that confidence first. So that was my game, at least, you know, that was what I was always lacking. So when I saw that, oh, there's a little bit of glimmer of hope there that I could still come back. It was just these small little things, whether it be in a race or in training, or just being happy out again back on my bike, or it wasn't just I was dreading getting on my bike for a training purpose, or think I'm going to a race unprepared. Those kind of things that kind of keep on going and really have to make the downward spiral. So for me, it was always just something small of giving myself that confidence, or someone installing that confidence in me. Like one of my teammates noticing, you know, that I was good, or just a stupid little little compliment. And then from there, it's usually just being so happy that I was back, you know, and then being, you know, appreciating so much more of being good on my bike, or just making a living riding my bike again. Whereas sometimes, like you said, if you're just always flatline, you're not going to appreciate the highs nor the lows. So I was always the happiest guy in the world coming back from the lows, because man, I didn't have this for the last couple of years.
It's almost funny because this is where the inner Italian comes out, right? And the inner Italian says it's almost like you enjoyed being Rocky Balboa, right? You enjoyed that, right?
I mean, I didn't need to be I didn't need to be the dark horse that often, you know. I mean, it definitely made it a little bit gray hairs, and really from, you know, everyone, my support system around me, you know, from my parents to my wife, you know, that's really what always made me really come back. I just, you know, thinking about them, what they've already sacrificed to get me to where I was today, I just can't give up now. So those are the kind of things that really spurred me on.
Well, John,
and when I had kids, even more so. When I had kids, you know, I always thought about like, what do I think of my father? And I was thinking, well, I want my kids to think as much as I thought of my father. I want them to be proud of what I did out there. And that's what really put me into the fifth gear later in my career, is first of all realizing that I'm not gonna be able to do this for the rest of my life. That these days are numbered, and that you better start giving everything you got. And that means dieting a little bit better, all those little things, and cutting out the sacrifices. And I'm very happy that they did occur.
So John, you're hearing praises for you and your wife for what you did for Christian. I gotta ask you, what was it like for you when Christian had a little bit of a dip and he was working his butt off to make it back up? What was it like for you to watch him go through that?
I was death. It was absolutely death. I can't tell you how happy I am that he is in front of the microphone instead of on the bike, because I would wake up every morning, at 4:30 or whatever, and watch him on TV to try to see where he was, what he was doing, and hopefully I wouldn't see him on the ground. He broke, in 15 years as a pro, he broke 22 bones, and it was awful. It was absolutely awful to watch sometimes. In 08, when he did when he got fourth in the Tour, that was amazing. That was absolutely amazing. I knew he could do it. I knew it was there. He got out of the shadows of people and he was let loose, and I knew he could do it. He had the confidence and everything else. I think the proudest moment I was in 09 when he broke several vertebrae in his back in the Giro. And he couldn't walk. He couldn't open up a refrigerator, for 2 weeks afterwards. And then they started taking him out for bike rides and taking him out, and he rode the Tour of Switzerland. And then he got sixth in the Tour de France while helping Bradley Wiggins. That was amazing, But the ups, the downs were tough. 04, I felt so bad for him because he just couldn't get out of his own way. You could see him on the bike. He wasn't right. He was sitting wrong. And there was nothing. He was way out of my territory to try to help him. But it was very, very difficult.
John, I mean this with total compliment behind all this. You remind me a lot of my mom, and you remind me a lot of my mom from something that Christian had said before, and that you weren't the expert coach, and you did an amazing job putting him in front of people that could help his career. But hearing you talk now, I guess kind of like you make me think of my mom, and I guess my big question for you is this: when you're developing this young talent and you're seeing this incredible specimen of resiliency within your son, along the ways, what were you trying to power within him? What were you trying to give him in terms of that I don't know, mental, emotional, social support? What were the things that were important to you to pass on to him to help him get to where he is now?
I can't pinpoint anything but I would just pat him on the back and say, good job. You're doing good. You're doing what you need to do. Have fun with Leah, have fun with the girls, have fun, and just try to level out, and not have the mountains in front of you, to compete against you, and he did a great job with that, but it was a lot of his own stuff.
Well, Christian, you're hearing this. Was it just that? Was it just those little things that gave you the push? Was that enough?
Yeah, it was just support in general, but it was more the things that I was alluding to before. From when you're 12 years old or 18 years old, and hearing those kind of things. It was those things. Keeping me grounded and keeping me try to be a balanced lifestyle. There are some things that I hold near and dear to my heart at all times. There's always got to be a breaking point for everyone for how much work and really just not being completely one-dimensional. And maybe that was a negative, especially when you watch like what you're talking about, when you're watching Last Dance and you're watching guys with mentality like Michael Jordan or Lance Armstrong, for example, that was it. They were hardcore into one thing only. And I did have that, at times. And I would be horrible to live with, and that's all that mattered to me. But I just always really wanted to be as well-rounded as possible. And I think that's a lot of what my dad's alluding to, like just try to enjoy the whole thing. This is not going to be forever kind of thing. Enjoy, smell the roses kind of thing. All those nuance that you'd like to see for your kid who's you don't want them to go and be breathing fire, and even they're young to make it happen. So, I mean, I got to say that you see that. I see that with my friends, and I see the guys who had a ton of success, and they had a lot more of that than I did. Just that uber focus, just that competitive drive that is, I have that, of course. There's no way I'm gonna be lying straight to your face saying that I didn't have that, but I didn't have that at all times.
Right.
And I think that's more that what my dad always tried to instill, and my mom really just trying to make me well-rounded, and not be a jerk, and just enjoy and try to enjoy your life as much as you can.
Well, what is so amazing about what you guys are sharing that a lot of the greats talk about subtly is the simplicity of putting one step in front of the other when you're building yourself back up and you're getting literally back on the bike kind of thing. You mentioned earlier, Christian, how you found little successes when times were tough. Your dad is mentioning just little tidbits of support. I'm proud of you. Keep going. You're doing great. Just little simplistic things that can mean so much in the big picture. And I think we pass by that a lot. And to not to do like a salacious plug here, but in our program that we have, our system with Headset Sports, that's all we are. It's little raindrops of insight, little raindrops of support to help create that. But your message is a powerful one, where if you can create those little victories along the way, we sometimes underestimate how big those things really are. And I guess for you, what does it feel like when you start gaining momentum? What was that like when you started saying, okay, you know what, I'm back? What does that feel like?
Well, I think when you are back and you start having a little bit of that confidence, you start looking forward to things that you can do to make yourself better. Whereas not just survive, not just chase your tail all the time. So when you have that confidence, you're thinking about, okay, what could I do to better myself? Other than saying like, well, hey, do you want to go have a beer this weekend? Yeah, I can't finish this race, or I can't be top 20 if my life depended on it anyways. Why not? Then you start thinking, well, if maybe I can, and I'm gonna say, no, I'm good. I'm gonna stay in tonight. Or these things compound themselves into that you really have that confidence. You're doing everything in your own power to make yourself, and you see yourself as being one of those guys in that top 10 or top 5 or the winner, and it just keeps on compounding themselves on the way up. And the same thing happens on the way down. They have the same mentality, but it's going the wrong way. You're like, well, screw it. You want to go out? Yeah, I suck. I'm going out, or do you want to do something else? Yeah, I'm going to go on vacation, because it's not going to do me any good anyway. So yeah, I think you have the same mentality, unfortunately, on the way down, but it's those little things that start catching wind and really giving yourself, really ultimately, it's all about confidence. When you have, or Lisa with me, it was always about confidence and having that. And I didn't have it that often, but it's such an empowering feeling to start a race knowing that you are one of the best. And I tell you what, the nerves, because you don't have nerves when you know you can't win. You're just whatever. You're just doing. You're putting the time clock in.
Right.
But when you know that you could win, then you put that pressure on your shoulders.
So this might be a really stupid question, but I got to ask it now, right? You bring up an amazing point that for a lot of people, not just athletes, when you're making your way up the ladder, or you're coming out of whatever hole you're in, you can get to a point where you feel like you've given as much as you can give, and then there's nothing there. It's a wall. It's just an endless wall that I can't ever overcome. So why not look in the opposite direction? Like you said, why not go out? I'm not gonna be a top 5, top 10, top 10. Why not? You had a ton of those opportunities, I'm sure, when you were striving to be your best again. If there was one thing inside of you that kept you from making that bad turn, what do you think it was that kept you from not making that bad turn?
Wow. Now I feel like I'm in the couch right now in your office.
Lie down.
I don't know about
again.
this, man.
Feel free to cry. Tell Dad about the issues you had.
I know you're gonna make me. It's like Oprah. Damn. I really don't know. I think it was just I think it was just instilled with me that work ethic, that came from not only my dad but his dad and my mom's dad. I mean, like just that family of what you do, and you're not here to go and be a knucklehead. Like you have things that nobody in our family has ever had before. Don't mess it up. Yeah, I mean, I've never really thought about that, Jason, to be honest with you. I not for a split second. I just kind of what we did. And with me, it was always a big deal when I had a team aspect of anything. So if I was by myself, it was a lot harder for me to keep focused. Not that I would have a time and I'd go off on a tangent, but I worked a lot better with it in a team atmosphere of giving my all. And that's what I always had from a young age with the team pursuit team. And then later on with great American teams that I was a part of. And when I didn't have that, I really flailed, and that was hard for me. So even to this day, I love, if I'm working, I really love and I thrive being in a group atmosphere. I'm not really just the best on my own. So I think the team aspect of that and really relying on each other and not letting each other down by doing something stupid, like going on a Thursday night and going on a bender for a couple of days, being stupid like that, it never even approached my mind.
Again, your honesty, like, I mean, just seeing in your face. Today is the first time we're actually like seeing each other face to face. Lucky me, unfortunate you. Even Stevie Wonder could see in your face the honesty that what you're sharing today is so pure. And I'm wearing a long sleeve shirt and I've got goosebumps on in saying this because you nailed it out of the park in my heart, listening to you talk and hearing the words from your dad talk today. And it's just hard work ethic were the keys. But when I look at your face and I look at your body when you're talking and you're sharing this stuff today, you tell me, you exude to me at least, that there's something inside of you that either your mom and dad put together and made you, or different people, different coaches instilled within inside of you, or maybe it's just the team aspect alone that said to you, quitting's not an option. And you might call it hard work, but there's something deeper there. And I don't know what you call that secret ingredient. I think everyone's recipe for success is a little bit different. But there's got to be something inside of you that says, I'm not tapping out. I'm not saying I didn't want to quit many times. Oh. I didn't make the Olympic team in '96. I was completely heartbroken. 2004, I asked one of my good friends I was going to come and work for him for his cycling team. Later on, there's been 2 or 3 times that for sure that that's it, I'm done. And yeah, whether that was one phone call and him just saying, hey, why don't you go back to bed and sleep on this? You're not going to make a decision at 3:30 in the morning to end your career. Or 96, just going out and having a good time with my buddies back in Chicago for a bit and really blowing off some steam and recalibrating everything, and then having the best year of my career the year after. All these kind of things, there's a whole lot of reasons why everything happens. Sometimes it's just luck, sometimes in the right time, right place. And sometimes I'm a big believer in making your own luck. The hard work is not going to go away.
Jason, can I add something into that?
Please, John, please.
In '96, when Christian didn't make the Olympic team, I was very upset because it was all politics, and he was just as good as anybody else. But anyways, we went up, he and Leah went up to Ladysmith, our place up in Wisconsin, and before I did. And I got there and Leah was upstairs and I said, where's Christian? And he says, he's sleeping in the basement. I said, it's 2:00 in the afternoon. What's he doing sleeping? He said, he's not feeling too good. So I go down there and say, what's up? And he says, just leave me alone. And I said, no, let's go for a bike ride. And thank God that I was good enough to go with him at this time because he was obviously very good. So
I must have been really hungover.
No, you weren't. You were just depressed. And he was totally down. And I had just lost a lot of money with the Vandedrome, my portable bicycle track. And I said, Christian, we're on this ride. And I said, we can both quit. We can both go, just say screw cycling and just be done with it. Or you can go back and never be, ever be dependent on a coach's choice. Don't ever, you got to be better than anybody. And all of a sudden he was half-wheeling me, and all of a sudden I was sitting on him, and then all of a sudden he dropped me. And so that was just one case in point where just a little bit of a pep talk, I guess. Hopefully, thank God that I was there for him.
It's amazing. But again, John, that's the brilliance of you, and the simplicity of you providing, I believe, a huge pillar in Christian's life. And Christian, there's something about you that's special to be even open to hearing something like that. Because I'll just speak for myself. When I talk to people, I try to explain how I understand how you feel. So rather than being the guy who says, "Oh, I know how you feel," I like to say, "Well, this is how I feel when you tell me things, and I can compare them. And am I right? Am I wrong? Am I too much, too little?" And for me, I don't know how I would have done, not that I'm anything or close to you in athleticism, but I believe, I don't know if I would have been open to hearing something like that from a parent. I don't know if I would have taken something like that the same way. And that's a special trait for you. You said something like, you make your own luck. And I believe in that. One of my most favorite songs is a song from Eric Clapton, and it's called, The Way You Use It. And he has these lyrics that I have on a little piece of paper in my office. And the lyrics go something like this. No one is lucky till luck comes along. No one is weak until someone is strong. And sometimes it's the littlest things that make you realize that you can be strong. And luck is part of life, but you got to make your luck. And I throw that back to you because I believe you've made your luck. I believe you work your ass off. You made your luck.
I think in that instance, just knowing that you have a choice as well. There was times in my career that I didn't feel like I had a choice. Then I was still young. I was 20 years old. I think I was 20 years old still there in '96. So the amount of pressure that I put on myself was ridiculous, really, to think of give me a break. I mean, you didn't make your Olympic team, life goes on, as a 20-year-old. But at that point in time, I thought it was over, and I compared myself a lot to my dad as well. So it was like, all right, he made his Olympic team at 19. Well, I got to make it, at 19 or ahead. He went professional then, so I'm going to be there. And so I had all these things that I had in my head that I used to play these kind of little games with, but haven't realized that you have options that, dude, you could retire tomorrow and you don't have to ride your bike ever again. You go to school. You're going to be, everything's going to be okay. I could say that there was times though when I was in Europe, when I was deep in my career, that you didn't have those options. And that's a different conversation, okay, now you're married, you have a kid, you don't really have many life skills right now. You don't have an education. You're kind of, you're not stuck. It's not that bad. It's not that dire. I've been given such a gifted life to begin with. Like, God forbid I would say anything like that. But it was a different conversation in '96 to, when some things are different as far as what my options were later on in the career.
Yeah. So I don't want to take you guys too much hostage here, but I want to throw some questions at you here like this, Christian. You did something pretty wow that I know a lot of athletes in your sport don't do, and you went back to back grand tours with the Giro and then the Tour de France. When you did this in 2008, you got the pink jersey in the Giro, and then you came in 4th overall at the Tour. Like, I can't even imagine what your body felt like going through this. I guess my big question for you first is, what was it like for you physically in between the first huge race and then getting ready for the second one? Like, what were you going through?
No, well, you answered the question without even knowing you did. The hard part is not necessarily the Grand Tours, because most people, not a lot, there's quite a few riders, more than you think, do two Grand Tours back to back. The difference being that what you do in between them is hard. And so when that finished, we drove straight up to Switzerland and we did a training camp on Monday morning. So we didn't go home. We didn't go and see everybody. Our families came to us. So we went straight to altitude and went to altitude training camp for 3 weeks in between the Giro and the Tour de France. And that was hard. And then, on day 20, my wife realized that she was pregnant, and like, so I'm getting this, I'm on a phone call with this. And then that's when finally I just went, all right, I'm out. And I hadn't been home at that point in time, I don't know, 7 weeks or so. So I finally just got out of there and went home to the bed. I was only home for 6 or 7. And then right after that, went straight to the Olympics in Beijing. So it's really it's not really the physical part, because as a cyclist, we race so much more than you realize. I average right around 85 days of racing a year. And then when you add all the days in training camps in between them, that's the hard part, is the mental side of being away and those kind of sacrifices and living in a hotel room for days upon days upon days.
Yeah.
That's what will crack a man. It's not necessarily the physical of going and training hard, because you live for that. You still love that. It's more everything else.
I guess for me, I respect so much what you guys do on a physical end. I so do. And for me, I think of what my mind would be like if I knew within a couple of weeks, I got to go through all that again, physically again. Like I'm going into another train wreck. I'm going into another car accident physically. Yeah. That's coming on up.
And that year though, it was all for a purpose. We're going to go there. We're going to go try to win the first stage in the team time trial. So we were really ready for that, but we weren't necessarily ready for the mountains. So I was a little bit overweight. So that was part of the process of just getting through that race and kind of going for the jersey a couple of times in the first 10 days, which I did. And I stayed up there in the top 10 for a long time. And then just threw in the towel when I got way too tired, because I wasn't, like I said, not really prepared for the Dolomites, which are just horrific if you're not. And so I just finished the race in the gruppetto for the most part in the back. And then I went to work in those training camps, and I lost 4.5 pounds, even put my bike on a diet. My bike was grossly overweight for what it should have been. So putting that all together, I came to tour 6 to 7 pounds lighter than I was at the Giro. And then I was ready to rip. And so when you have that mentality, like, all right, we're doing this for a purpose, everything, even though we're sucking, we're just barely getting through this race. We started with 9. We only finished with 4. One of those guys was like half a man, who's, let's call it 3.5. And then going to the training camp, and then having that purpose of, and seeing that things are starting to click, and everything that we put on the drawing board in January. And we did take some big risks thinking about that this could work. It worked perfectly. And then, doing a couple little tests that I had a mountain that was only about 30 minutes away from me in Girona, Spain. And I knew exactly what those times were for the best in the world. And I beat that time by over a minute. And I was like, oh my man, I didn't even think that was going to be possible for me. And then again, back to our conversation before, you start getting that confidence going, and you start thinking, oh man, if I could do this, and that was so-and-so's time before, and he did this, then man, I'm right there. I'm ready to go. Let's go. And then having more confidence of, I'm putting the boys to work for me, which was always, I was always one of those guys. I was always in one of those subservient roles. So yeah, those are the kind of things that really are intertwined. But if it wasn't for my director being Jonathan Vaughters back then, having confidence that I could do this, I would have never attempted to do this. I would have been happy to just go back home and then go do this, train hard, but not that hard. But I would have never gone to a training camp in Switzerland up at altitude, and then another one up in Spain, and then another remote mountain location, and live like a monk. I would have never had that confidence to put that equity behind me. So yeah, again, you have to have that support system, and have people have confidence in you.
I got to tell you, I have so much respect for you, and what you shared with us today, because not only are you talking about the tremendous physical exertion you put out, but even the personal, like you know, your wife is pregnant and you're sharing that with us. Like no one's ever going to hear about that or know about that through Wikipedia. I mean, you know, what's amazing is I talk to athletes a lot about when we're competing. One of my analogies is when we go out to compete, we wear a backpack, and in that backpack, it's got your skills, it's got your strategy, it's got all the things that you need to be successful on that day. But in that backpack, you have other things that you carry with you. You've got family, you've got life issues, social issues, whatever it may be, right? And the one thing that's most consistent with every athlete is, how do you feel you will perform best? And if I were to say to you, okay, you've got this backpack on and you're going to go out to race, and this backpack is going to be filled with all these different things in it, what do you think will help you make your race easier? What do you think would help you make that ride a bit easier? What would you say?
Well, I'm hoping that backpack is light as possible, because I know what you're alluding to. You don't want that to be baggage of lead and everything else. But yeah, you want that to be helium, of course. You want it to all be positive, and you want things to motivate you and not hinder you. And there's so many things that, whether it's self-induced or in between your own ears, or it's a true struggle. Nobody knows what's going on in somebody else's home, and no one knows what it's like to be in their shoes. So yeah, it's and this is apparent this last couple of months. I feel a lot of people are definitely have a shorter fuse right now with being in this, and the smaller things. You don't necessarily know what their financial situation is at home, if they lost a job, or if someone died and they weren't even allowed to go to the hospital to go and see them because of COVID. So there's been a lot of that as well. So you never knew exactly what everyone's backpack was, but you had to try to, especially the team leader, try to see into it as much as possible and try to get as most out of them as possible as well.
Yeah.
You couldn't just be too nice. You couldn't just say, "Oh yeah, no, don't worry about it. Go home, yeah, and just enjoy." No, man, we're here. We're at the Tour de France. We need everyone, and that was something that Lance did an amazing job of really of pushing everybody and getting the most out of, and that's one of those things that I learned from him for sure. And I had the benefit of racing for some of the best in the world, and really just trying to take a little bit all the positives of all those guys, and then try, when I did have my shot, do it as them justice, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's again, you say something that a lot of the best say indirectly, and that you point reference to some of your big influences, and taking something from each one of them, right? And that's the recipe that I bring this up all the time in every scenario I think that I talk to people with. You create your recipe for success, right? And those recipes are based upon the ingredients that you hold dear to your heart, you know in your head are going to help you, and you yourself say, if I pull them all together, it's going to taste good, feel good, and then I'm going to play good, per se, right? And I think it's so huge what you say.
I'll tell you one. I got to close with this, Jason. I got to get back out to my kids, but
Yeah,
I remember one instance, and to bring my dad back in this conversation. On June 1st, 2008, was the last day of the Giro, and like I said, I was barely getting through the mountain stages. We sucked. I mean, it was like 30, 40, 45 minutes behind the winners. We were coming home, and we just wanted to finish the damn race. And my dad called me up, and we're in Milan, and he said that his father, my grandfather, had passed away, and he had passed away actually a little bit before, but he didn't want me to know. But he's like, now that the race is over, you're safe, and I don't feel bad about this, then I want you to know. So I was like, holy shit, it was hard, because I missed the funeral, missing everything, the family, and not being supported there. So I was like, back to the baggage question, right? You don't necessarily know, but that day like propelled me, like, he was always so in awe that I was even racing in races like this that he never even thought was possible for people like us in the burbs to be a part of. So yeah, I just went and absolutely destroyed it out there that day. And I had no right to go that fast that day because I sucked, honestly. But it was like all that mental aptitude and just doing it all for him that day. And I think, I don't know, it was like 4th or 5th place in the time trial, which again, to where I was in the race,
Yeah.
I had no right being up there at that time. But
Yeah.
that's part of being the positive. And how are you going to use that? Are you going to go back into your room and cry? Or are you just going to go and do him proud, you know?
Yeah, you turn it into rocket fuel. You turn it into
Yeah.
rocket fuel. And you know, I can't thank you enough because I know you got to get going. And John, I'm going to hold on to you because I got a couple of questions to throw at you. But one of the big questions I need to throw at you, John, while Christian is still here, is maybe you could put in some insight as to this rumor going around of something called the Belgian Mafia. And I'm wondering if you guys can maybe just, I don't know, tell us a little bit of behind the curtains of the Wizard of Oz scenario of the Belgian Mafia.
Well, it was the Vande Veldes, Van Houts, Van Geyses, and everybody at Northbrook. It was classic to watch. But some people didn't get along with each other, and then there was the Germans, and then there was the French, and it was very, very funny. But yeah, Danny's dad and my dad and my uncles, they were the mafia, no doubt about it.
I love it. I love it. It's amazing the support systems you create. Christian, I know you got to get going, and John, I've got a few more questions for you, but Christian, I got to thank you so much for the time that you've given us, and maybe the last tidbit I ask of you is I know that you're in line to cover the Olympics, and will you be covering the Olympics moving forward and covering some of the races that might be coming on up? Will we see you on TV soon?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, there's a schedule in place for what it's worth. The Tour de France starts right now on paper August 29th into September, and some of these races like the Vuelta and the Giro are going to be coming after that. But the Tour de France is obviously having precedent. The Olympics is scheduled for 21 again, and all these races unfortunately won't not be on site. I will be in Stamford, Connecticut, so it won't have that same feeling. I won't be at the finish line of the Tour de France, at least not this year. Especially with COVID and just trying to minimize how many people are actually physically there. But yeah, hopefully some of these things will start to lift and we'll get to see sport yet again. It was great to see NASCAR over the weekend, even without people. But who knows what's going to happen, man? I mean, I'm optimistic. I'm excited for something to happen. Yeah, fingers crossed, man. Hopefully we'll be out there.
Oh, it's amazing. Thank you for today, Christian. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good job.
Good to see you, Jason.
Good to see
you.
you.
John. See you, John Vande Velde. Good to see you.
Bye, buddy. Good job.
John, I ask you something. You know, what's it feel like when you, as a parent, because I'll never know what it feels like to be you. I'm not lucky enough to have little ones of my own. I have 2 amazing stepkids. But I'm curious to know for you, what's it like as a dad, seeing all of your efforts come around like this?
Well, a lot of times I tear up at that question, but it's really good. It's really, really, really good to, and both Christian, Marissa, and my youngest son, Ian, it just to love the sport that I loved and to watch them grow to love it is just really special. You know, it's very special. I like Christian said, I pulled him away from cycling. I wouldn't let him race at 14 and 15. I said, you're not going to, I've seen so many good kids in juniors, they're out by the time they're seniors and trying to make an Olympic team, they're done. It's finished. And Marissa was the same way. I mean, she was 5th in the world, in the time trial, as a junior. And yeah, it's just so rewarding for me to watch him. They all 3 of them have been really good sponsors of our sport, and I'm very, very thankful to watch it.
I'll say this, buddy. One of the things that's so amazing about my opportunity to speak with you today and learning a lot about what you've done for this sport in terms of innovation is it gives me a chance to speak to somebody who's an innovator and a creator and I know that you had created an incredible program years ago with a portable velodrome. Can you explain what that concept was like? Because it's amazing. Like it's just amazing.
Yeah, well, I'll turn the question into two answers. There's when after Munich, I turned professional, and I raced in these 6-day races for 2 years over in Europe. And it was, you ever seen the movie They Shoot Horses, don't they? Well, that was us. We rode 12 hours a day on an indoor track, smoke filled every night. The Germans would shut the door, shut the window, get everything, so the Germans would drink more beer than ever. And it was awful. It was absolutely awful. You get done at 2 to 3 o'clock in the morning, and then you sit up straight in bed because you had somebody falling in front of you, and these are track bikes with no brakes or anything. And so I came back from that, and I said, 6-day bike racing is never, ever going to work in the United States. It's too slow. It's fixed. It was all, I didn't like it at all. And so I said, you know what? But my uncle, was really into cycling. He loved it. He said, let's build a bike track. So we did. And so my uncle and I and a guy from Minnesota, we built this thing. It was a portable bike track, but it was very expensive to put up. It took 7 semis to move. It took, 11 people for a couple days, for 4 or 5 days to put up. Danny helped me one time in Del Mar, and it was, the concept was good, but I was way ahead of my time, I spent a lot of money. I spent a lot of people's money, but what I did, instead of the 6-day bike race, I invented a game, and this game is something that I've worked at for 25 years, and it's called Speed Track. And when you go to a bike race, who do you cheer for? If you don't have somebody in the race, who do you cheer for? There's no home team. Like for San Diego Chargers or whatever. I'm sorry, Los Angeles Chargers.
That was a cheap shot there, buddy.
I had to get that in there. Anyways, there was no home team. So I invented this game, and there's always a home team, whether it be city against city, country against country, home team against home, or pro team. And it worked. It absolutely worked. And I've given presentations in front of 3 UCI presidents, and they all said, "Oh, that's a great idea, great concept, but we don't have any money. You got to do it by yourself." And after a lot of money, I'm done. I'm done, and unfortunately, the UCI is taking my idea, and they're probably going to form a league on their own. And so it hurts, but I've done a good fight, and I was up in Milton in Ontario for a long time, for 1 year.
Yeah.
They have a beautiful track up there, and working with Steve Bauer to try to make it work. And we had a great concept race, and everybody loved it. And I couldn't get it any further. So
I wonder if there's ways to help now with if we get our information out about what you're creating. I think it's a phenomenal idea, an absolute phenomenal idea. And I don't even remember exactly what the number is of millions of cyclists in just this country alone. I want to say the number was like 30 million or something like that. And these are people who love the bike. Like they love, and more importantly, what you're doing that I think is brilliant is you're bringing that team town mentality to the sport, which is what we're so hoping.
Yeah, you have to have somebody to cheer for, and you have to make it. You have to make it. God bless Christian and NBC. I love them, what they're trying to do, but it's road racing. It just doesn't work. For the American mentality to sit there for 4 hours and watch them on the road. But the game has got 12 races. They're boom, 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 and they're made for TV, and they're. We can measure the wattage, we can measure the heart rate, we can measure the speed, and put it right up on the TV screen instantaneously because it's in an indoor stadium. You can't do that on the road; it's too expensive.
Yeah.
So It's a great idea. I need help to do it, and hopefully, somebody will come by and say, yeah, let's do that.
I think you hit some of the key points with this, which is you have the wattage speed, you have the power meter that you look at, which are the stats that we see of every athlete, whether we're watching baseball, football, soccer, hockey, whatever it may be.
Exactly. You got it, Jason.
You have that. But what I think is even more impressive that you'll be creating, John, with this is you're now going to create an environment where cycling can now platform and stage personality.
Exactly.
The personality of the riders, right? Like, I mean, I was complimenting Christian today during our talk about how good he is on the mic and how good he is just in talking to people. You don't get that platform. People don't get to know him unless he's able to be seen how good of an athlete he is. And what a waste that would have been if that wasn't the case. We'd be missing out on a great person being an incredible ambassador for the sport. And it shouldn't just be that it's because of how good he is on the bike. It's because of who he is. And I think what you're doing here is you're allowing personalities to grow from within and really showcasing the personality of the athlete, which is done across every other sport.
Exactly. And you got it, Jason. And you can develop the statistics. You can, after every game, here's who won, here's the second, you got points. You have the standings where people can follow in the newspaper. You got the highest point maker. You got the highest wattage, the guy who went the faster, and the girl who is the men and women on the same team. So, I mean, there's just so many things in the game of speed track that is very, very attractive to everybody that loves the sport of cycling.
I think of the power of trash talking. I think of the power of we'll see you next week. Oh, they think they've got something on us. It would blow people's minds, John, because you're talking about a sport that has not really been able to capture that. They've not really been allowed to even go down that road. Maybe that's the taboo road of the sport, right? Where almost like Wimbledon or tennis, I'm not going to trash talk who I'm up against next week, right? Cycling has that finesse to it as well, right? And like you said, the European mindset is so different from here. Like, I grew up with a stepfather who could not stand soccer. Like, soccer was just like, he'd rather watch paint dry, and I was lucky enough to have a grandfather that got me into it, and I played. That was my second sport of joy. And a 2-1 game or a 1-0 game in soccer is huge. It's amazing. Like, you're thinking, oh my God, it's like tension the whole time. But if you're a football, basketball, hockey guy, watching that, oh my God, I'd rather donate an organ. It's so slow, right?
Yeah.
The same thing I feel would apply to road racing. I mean, I can't tune in with 2 minutes left to see who's going to win.
No.
Right? I got to watch the whole series. Like, it's a mini series. If I'm not going to dedicate my time to watching the mini series, I can tune in on the last episode, the last stage. Yeah, I might see who crosses the finish line, who gets the yellow jersey, but I don't know anything about what happened before all that. Like, I don't know why it's so dramatic that guy won or she won, because I didn't watch the miniseries, right? You're talking about bringing that North American mindset to this sport, which I think is just...
You got it. You got it. You got it. I mean, and I started from the beginning. I Americanized the sport of cycling because I was on the UCI track commission for 4 years, and I went to so many World Cups, so many Olympics, and so many World Championships, and they were gut-wrenchingly boring. They time trials. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work, and that's why track cycling has no sponsors, has no TV stuff, and finally they're going to take my idea, and they got Eurosport behind it and Discovery, and now they got some power.
Well, I'll say this, right? I mean, is there a way maybe for people to contact you? Is there a way for people to reach out to you? Because we will have like connectors when we put out this. But if there's any way that we can help get that word out, I mean, oh my God, what
Thank
an
you. No,
electric.
thank you very much. No, it's a great idea.
You
Great
know,
idea.
not to mention, I look at the world being what it is, and with the mentality that we have now, which is so great about going green, whether it's solar powered, whether it's electric cars, we now more than ever understand the value of water. You're talking about a green sport.
Absolutely.
You're talking about a green sport, right? Like
Yeah.
there's nothing bad about it to the environment, right?
No.
And you can't say that for every sport.
No.
But what you're doing is wow, like it's a green sport.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
think there's something there.
And I think, you know, companies like Waste Management would be totally behind this. You know, they'd be totally behind this because it's green, and there's no other sport like it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I think green is the way, buddy. The green is the way.
mm-hmm.
I think
Yeah.
is it, you look at the top 10 green entities that are out there from again, I'll tell you something that's on my mind right now, and I got to share it with you today. So I'm doing my homework last night, looking at you know, your story, Christian's story, and I don't know if you've seen this, but who's unleashing a bike? I believe this year is Tesla.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw that.
Wow.
Oh, I know.
That like you could be a football loving guy who
Yeah.
loves his Barca Lounger, his 12 pack,
Right.
and nachos. When you see that bike, that'll tempt you to get on that thing. Like
Absolutely.
that is wow.
Yeah, it's going to be something. I know. No, you're right.
So I'm thinking, you know, like, is there something
Oh, yeah.
right? So God bless.
Thank you. There's so many things, Jason, but I just need a break. I just need somebody to say, hey, you know, that's a great idea. Let's do this thing. But, you know, I've
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
done.
no.
Yeah.
With your permission, I will continue to float it out there. You're going to give me
Thank you.
contact information, and
Yeah.
just as you embed it into your kid, you're going to make your luck. I know you're going to do
Thank
it.
you. Thank
I
you.
can't thank you enough for being with me today. I can't thank you
My
enough.
pleasure.
You've been
My pleasure, Jason.
God bless you. Thank you.
Okay, buddy.
Talk
Good
to
job.
you soon.
See ya. Bye-bye.
Stay with me.